that are hard to reconcile. On the one hand, he and the scientists who wrote on specific aspects of the organization of research wanted to insist on the value of inquiry for a wide range of public concerns. On the other hand, they wanted to protect science from outside direction and interference, arguing that basic research should, as always been, given quote special protection and specially assured support. Their most popular rationale emphasized that basic research is crucial to avoid stagnation. In a telling metaphor, Bush saw such research as providing the scientific capital on which future technological ventures could draw. Vannevar Bush, was opposed by a democratically interested Senator Kilgore from West Virginia. He argued for public involvement, public oversight, democratic decisions about big scientific projects. Do you really want to send a man to Mars in 2010? Isn't that amount of billions and billions of dollars better spent for our children, better spent for health care, better spent for those types of inquiries? Bush said no. No. Science couldn't survive democracy. So instead, what was offered in response was a pragmatic response to Kilgore. Here's what people really want. Here's what the American consumer truly demands from its scientific community, he said. The most important document, he responded that it closed scientific progress is essential key to our security of the nation, to our better health, to more jobs, to higher standard of living, and to our cultural progress. What he was saying was that what people really want, when all things are considered, is not to sit in on an advisory panel to NIH or to CDC or to have a vote on which projects are undertaken. They want something delivered that's cheap, reliable, and fun. At your local Circuit City, your local Best Buy, the PD, your personal digital assistant, your cell phone. And indeed, if you look back, it was government-funded research that provided all the technological gizmos and gadgets we have today. The internet was not created by Al Gore. It was created by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, not to entertain kids or to make parents worry about porn sites. It was intended to decentralize governmental response in a preemptive strike by creating decentralized sites that could talk to one another. It was DARPA, through the funding grants to large research universities, that produced the high-speed processors, the parallel processing capacity, that created the backbone systems for the internet that you and I can now hook up to entertain ourselves. HDTV, the plasma screens that we use to watch NFL and drink ourselves silly, invented and included space exploration. The plasma TVs, the dumbed-down, cheaper versions of the high-tech and good stuff we can now buy at discount. And that's what Bush said. People truly don't want virtue. They truly don't want ethics. They want what they want. And that's what I worry about in terms of being a lawyer and of working so long in Indian country. Indian people, I worry, no longer want virtue and ethics. They want sort of the afterglow of virtue and ethics, the appearance of things, rather than reality. To sit on committees, yet not truly understand what's being discussed or how their vote will influence outcomes. One thing I believe, not just for indigenous peoples around the globe that are subject to TRIPS or to fair trade agreements, free trade agreements, but here, right here, in Montana, all across Indian country, it's us as Indian people, indigenous people, that are brought to the wall. We say we demand from the scientists, we demand from the funded research institutes a part of the pie. But the pie we demand, and I hate to say this, I think Sam's right, is always money. Or always jobs. What we should demand is some dignity, and some insight, and some virtue. That relationship in which once again beginning as sort of the queen of human relationships, in which the purpose of knowledge is to better ourselves and better our communities, not to create data that may never be used or may be housed in ways that become antithetical. Nobody knows, for example, how the Human Genome Project is going to play out. Promises like Bush's promises were made down the road, way down the road, you can see far enough. The Human Genome Project, which is now stalled and can't figure out how to link in an endless maze of how these cells relate and how the internal cells get together. It promised cures for chronic diseases, the end of cancer, the end of Parkinson's, the end to those manifold things that if you all get old enough, and I hope to, sometime we have to face up to. But what it doesn't promise is an ethical relationship. It doesn't promise involvement. It doesn't promise participation. It doesn't promise making people better. Is living longer making people better? Let's think back about the old days. My father was chairman of the 3FLA Tribes for 20 years. Didn't live that long, died at 15. But during his life, I like to think he lived a good life. What are the promises that these things can make in terms of science without ethics? Science and lives without virtue, in which we depend only on law as a sort of third or fourth best substitute. Think about that when you think about creating your structures, dealing with IRBs, dealing with good research, dealing with John Hopkins or some lesser known research. But I appeal to you. Really, Sam, in many ways, is right. We sometimes listen for a long time, and then we start shaking our heads. He's right. You've got to go through a long, tortuous route to get there. But the point being that he's right that it's us as indigenous peoples that have to demand more in a principled, sensible, realistic, articulable way before we'll get the scientists to hear, rather than having to roll their eyes or see he's telling another story about history to Caribbean. So I'd like to thank you for taking this time and listening and coming together to deal with difficult, perhaps almost unresolvable issues. If you expected me to suggest some fail, safe, surefire legal solutions, there aren't. If you want to have a better life, you have to do it yourself. You want your community, your families to improve, you have to do it yourself. There's no other way. Researchers won't help you. Lawyers in the last analysis can't help you. You and your communities have to help yourself. Thank you. My father was chairman